Well, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for the BioQuest How To Webinar. Today, we'll be focusing on how BioQuest and QUBES can support your project. My name is Sam Donovan. I'm the Director of Outreach and Strategic Engagement for the BioQuest Curriculum Consortium. And in this webinar, we're really providing an overview of how BioQuest and QUBES support projects. And we're also using it as an advertisement for the Spring 2022 FMN that focuses on projects and getting them up and running and taking advantage of the QUBES platform. Over the course of this brief webinar, we're going to touch on a couple of topics. The idea is to keep this to 15 or 20 minutes, and we'll have a recording of it so people who aren't able to be here face-to-face can review it. And then we will have some open discussion. So the slides should be available. They'll be published on the office hours and webinar page, which is on the last slide, the address for that. So in this webinar, we're going to start quickly by just orienting to how the QUBES platform is organized, because it's a little bit tricky, and want to help point out a couple of things there. And then we'll think about different ways that projects and groups of people have used a group function in QUBES to organize their activities. Then we'll look briefly at how groups can be managed, which gives you a sense of how they can be set up for different scenarios. And this is really going to be quick because it's fairly technical, but it will be a focus of the FMN in the spring. Then we'll talk just a little bit about BioQuest project support services for using the QUBES platform. And then I'll say a few things about the hosting a project with BioQuest and QUBES FMN, give you a sense of what that'll look like, and some additional resources for learning how to host a project. Okay, so part one, how the QUBES platform is organized. So we've been using this terminology, a scientific gateway, which is really a cyber infrastructure that combines resources in a useful way that are driven to support a community trying to get some work done. And this is built by educators for educators and really emphasizes collaborative workspaces and open education resources publishing. So we have this sort of language of QUBES and BioQuest. QUBES was an NSF-funded project that is now wrapped up, and it is being sustained as part of the BioQuest project, which is an education nonprofit and has been involved in QUBES from the beginning. In terms of being an infrastructure, this graph was taken from our original proposal, but this was the picture we were trying to paint, that we would bring people together with resources and professional development and functionalities that any education reform project would want to be able to use. So this image is a little bit dated, but we'll be talking about some of those concepts. And then in terms of organization, you should know that the organization I'm going to emphasize here is reflected in the navigation system for QUBES. So you'll see resources, community, and services at the top level. So when you take a look at the resources tab, you're going to see that it's all about education resources published in the Open Education Resources Library. This functionality has full support for the OER lifecycle, allows you to version things as you improve them, and for other people to adapt them if you've given that license requirement or that license capacity. As of today, we've got 1,619 resources available in the library, and each of those resources is connected to authors who developed those resources and the groups that they were working in when they published them. So right off the bat, we can't talk about resources without also mentioning community some. And these resources are really drawing a lot of visitors to QUBES. And so the sense of having rich materials to build on has helped drive some of the interest in QUBES. So when you look at the second tab, the community aspects, in terms of how QUBES is organized, it's really a collection of groups, and these are membership controlled areas that allow you to collaborate, share information, and customize your space. You can also publish from your groups, and all of those go into the central OER library. And then resources can be displayed in groups, and they can be seen from the library itself. So here are a couple of our partner projects taken from a page that I'll reference later. And we can see that these groups are, again, connecting with resources they're publishing in a couple of different ways. So here's a relatively recent RCN project, the Riverfield Studies Network, that's only published one resource themselves, but they've picked up several other QUBES resources that are appropriate to their community and integrated them into their website. And they're being displayed with a card view. Here we're looking inside of the Quantitative Biology at Community Colleges group, and they've produced a lot of materials, and they have several ways that they can be organized. And if you go to this site, you'll see that when you click on one of these categories, you'll get a list of the modules that are available within those categories. And here's a group called Networking for Integrating Bioinformatics. So it's around bioinformatics education, and they defined several competencies listed with these buttons at the top. And so the materials that they've published in the QUBES library are not only accessible in the library itself, but they're pulled directly into their group and organized by competencies. You can just click on a button and you jump to those resources. So basically, before I leave that, QUBES is a bunch of groups put together, the ability to publish OER materials, and then you can mix and match in a whole host of ways to generate the most productive setup for your project. So in part two, we want to address, so what do you do with a group, right? It's this membrane, it's not a cell, it's a membership bound group of people. And we're just going to give a couple of examples. So groups can be used to support a meeting. And here we have an example, the Northwest Biosciences Consortium held a meeting face-to-face, but they used the QUBES platform, their group space on QUBES, to supply information and materials and some discussions amongst participants in their meeting. Another way to think about using a group to support a meeting, this is the meeting that the BioQuest Curriculum Consortium community runs on an annual basis. This is a much more intensive use of the QUBES platform. Lots of participant products are generated and captured in the publication system, and there's an emphasis on pre and post meeting collaboration in the shared group. All of these are available for you to go and look at, and some of them are more open than others, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. Another type of meeting, just to sort of give you a sense of what's possible, we've collaborated with a couple of institutions that were running a cure together. And when the pandemic hit, they wanted to put their student poster sessions online. And so we built some QUBES groups, and they were able to upload posters and display them and have conversations online. So all sorts of ways that you can use a group to support a scholarly meeting. Another way to use groups is to just create a private workspace. Here's a group, Introduction to Biostatistics, that's designed to support a class, right? So this is a group of students. They would be the only ones allowed into this group, depending on how the instructor set it up. And materials, resources, student assignments could all be shared here. Private workspaces can be used to coordinate special interest groups or advisory boards, and we use them extensively for our professional development. We call them faculty mentoring networks. And this other example that I've cited here is a group of postdocs and graduate students who started a journal club. They were distributed. They wanted to get some professional development and sort of guide their own scholarship. So they made a group and got started with a shared journal club. So it's really quite flexible. But mostly we're here to talk today about hosting a project, an education reform project generally. And I mentioned those other things, meetings and private groups, because this is sort of like a set of building blocks that you can use to build up the resources that you need to support your project. So again, here are some icons from different partner projects that are hosted on QUBES. You can view those through the partner page. And this includes professional societies, grant-funded projects, people's pet projects, trying to get some materials that they've developed out and disseminated and get feedback on them. So it really, again, what it means to host a project can depend a lot on the nature of the project you have. So just a couple of examples to give you a sense of the look and feel. Here's a community college group called BioInsights that use this for group collaboration, some meetings, and has been, I think it was an RCN, I should know that. And here's a group that was focused on math anxiety and overcoming math anxiety for students. They did some custom formatting that changed around their menu structure and gave them a very different look. Here's a little collaboration with some of the HHMI biointeractive materials. Of course, they have a massive website with high quality materials, but they wanted to be able to tap into the QUBES community, draw the BioQuest community as well, draw people over to their resources and make them aware of them. So again, different kinds of projects that can be hosted. So if you want to host a project, we have to get a little bit into the weeds here. And again, this is going to be a very superficial look, but just mentioning a couple of things so that people are oriented to what's possible. And it can be broken really into 4 areas. We can work on who can join the group and how they join the group. We can work on the content that's displayed and navigation within the group. We can choose a variety of tools to facilitate communication and collaboration for members of the group. And then, of course, as I've mentioned, all of this integrates with the Open Education Resources Library. So when you're in a group and you are a manager, then it will tell you that. And so I got my red arrow kind of covered up there, but if I click on that manager button, I get the manager dashboard, and this is where some of these features can be addressed. So let's take a quick look here at the options for membership settings and join policy. Essentially, you can pre-identify how you would like people to be associated with your group. You can make it open so that people can self-assign and join you with their QUBES account. You can make it restricted so that you need to okay them before they join you, right? If you're having a private working group, that's probably appropriate. You can, of course, close it down even more. We really like to emphasize these top 2 because the reason that you want to work in a collaborative space is you generally want more people to join you and to pitch in. So again, this is just a small taste of sort of the details that we'll go through in the Faculty Mentoring Network in the spring. With respect to developing pages, putting the material into your group, there's a function, you get an entire space. Oh, my image animation didn't work here. You can build new pages, establish relationships between pages, set them into menus, edit them, all sorts of functionality. And here we see one page opened up and we're looking at a WYSIWYG editor, and we have the options to save it and a variety of functions. So not too heavy on the coding, little HTML, adding in some macros, but we're developing really strong support resources for those. When you're building your group and managing it, you really are going to have a lot of options about the communication and collaboration tools available. So this is just a little snapshot of one of those manager areas where you've got a whole host of built-in functionalities in your group. And for each of those functionalities, you have the capacity to set access level. And here are the options, right? It could be anybody who's coming by. People can download resources without being logged in QUBES. So lots of people just float around and look at publicly available things. You might want people to be a registered hub user to do some of these things. And lots of times you're going to want them to be a member of your group so that they can participate and contribute to that group. So for instance, in the forums, if you're having discussions, you generally want people to be a group member in order to participate with those. And we always recommend not turning everything on, starting small and then expanding as you need functionality. The connection between groups and publishing is made through projects. And again, I'm not going to go into the details here, but we're looking at a project around OER UDL ungrading. And they have got some materials and some members and a publication. And what happens is you just go into this project, you start your new resource and follow through the publication process. But what this allows is that you can have multiple projects within a group that allow for that all those materials are published and tagged to the group itself. Okay, I want to turn our attention quickly to the FMN that's coming up in the spring. The whole idea of this FMN is to work with projects who are currently using QUBES or considering using QUBES as a platform and simultaneously help people get started, teach them some basic functionalities, and generate a really strong documentation system so that others can use it. We will meet from mid-January through mid-April on an every other week basis. So the week 1 to 3 to 5 is we have a 1 hour meeting in week 1, a 1 hour meeting in week 3, and a little bit of homework in between. So you can see the topics here are at the interface of how does your project, what does your project need to get its work done? What can QUBES do and how can it serve your project? And we're really addressing a wide range of issues that are tied explicitly to NSF supported activities. I just want to say a little bit more about how the workflow will go on a sort of bi-weekly basis. We'll meet every other week for an hour synchronously. That time will be golden for discussion and feedback and so forth, troubleshooting. And then between those weekly meetings, there'll be some recommended readings to review, a small assignment that'll give you some experience using the materials on QUBES, and then taking that back and reflecting on your project implementation plan and how you might want to use those tools to support your project's goals. And then in those off weeks, there'll be office hours and help discussion sessions available between the synchronous sessions. So as you get stuck or have ideas and need feedback. Here's what 1 week would look like. In week 7, currently scheduled to focus on promoting community in groups. And so associated with that, there'll be a reading from the Center for Scientific Collaboration community participation model. And here's a little sketch of the model. They've got really nice ways to describe different ways that people engage with one another to get project work done. And it really helps me to think about activities within these categories. So that's a little bit of a reading there. And then you'll be asked to contribute to the FMN collections that we'll be building locally with resources for building community. So you'll get some experience participating, and we'll be sharing resources And then in terms of reflecting back to your group, trying to map out opportunities for participation. And then, of course, office hours are available for feedback, troubleshooting, and discussion. So here is a snapshot of the homepage for the FMN. Here's the address. These slides are available and these links will be included with the recording. Do note that the applications are due at the end of the year. So I encourage you to join us. Feel free to email and ask if you have questions. There are a couple of other links available here. We have a Google form for new projects that are interested in starting up with some BioQuest and QUBES support. We have a page on supporting grant projects and a general page for services. We have a support group, a group that's designed to help groups get their work done, and we're ramping that up next semester. And then we hold office hours and webinars, and there's information supplied there. And again, it's part of our primary navigation scheme. This is a team project, lots of people involved, and I appreciate all of them. And I hope that you will check us out, ask some questions, and maybe join us for the FMN in the spring. Thanks so much.